Hi there, this is GroovinNG and welcome back to my channel. Today we're back in Renoise and we've got quite a fun tutorial today where we're going to go through some synthesis in Renoise and we're going to go and try and create a Reece bass just using the waveform modulation and effects kind of lanes in Renoise, no external synths or nothing. And I'm going to show you a couple of different methods of doing this. One is a bit easier to set up but is a bit more fiddly, and the other one takes a lot longer to set up but it's a lot more flexible once you have it. So Reece Basses, I think, is a good place to start, and you'll see there's lots of techniques you can pick up from this for doing other types of synthesis in Renoise. So to begin here, we've got this blank window. Now you can actually go and you can start drawing in. If you click on the draw, you can draw in your own waveforms. But in this basics window, it's got a triangle, a square, a sine and a sawtooth to get you going. And so they're quite useful. You can also drag in, if you've got any third-party samples, like I have I have some massive wavetables, and you can just drag these in as well. So if you have any wavetable synths, you can drag these in and then they will just play. That's a pretty random one. I needed to put on forwards loop as well. So you can drag wavetables in, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to use a sawtooth here. What makes up a Reece bass, what it essentially is a bunch of detuned saw waves in unison. And so we can go about recreating this in Renoise. So at the moment we've just got one waveform here. We've got one voice and it's just this sawtooth. So what you can do is you can come into the samples area and actually just duplicate our original sawtooth. And so now we've got two, both looping, and we can continue to do this. And I'm just going to do 6 sawtooths for now. And then what you've actually got to do is, to make the detuning, you've got to start transposing these different sawtooths around. At the moment, they're all just playing on top of each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to detune the first one down here. I'm going to fine tune it -10. The second one's going to go +10. And this one's going to go -15. And this one's going to go +15. And then I'm going to go -20. And I'm going to go +20. So now we've got hear all that phasing distortion. That's kind of what you want from your that's sounding pretty Reece already, quite gnarly. And we can do a couple more things here. This is kind of the basic way of doing it, but we can start to do some panning, which is kind of going to spread it a bit more. So let's do something similar. Go 10 and then pan it 10 left, and then these ones can go 20. These ones can go 30. So you can fiddle with these settings as much as you want. Low D. So it's sounding pretty crazy, and this is essentially what you need. Now what we want to do is turn mono on, so the notes are gonna cut each other off. We could also put in a little bit of glide if we wanted. Still sounding pretty gnarly. So what we're going to do is, I'm just doing this in the lane here, and I'm going to go a filter, most definitely, just to control some of that craziness. And alternatively you can put a filter in this section, but I've just done it in the track area. You could also put a filter in the modulation window as well, but we'll get into that later because this one is just kind of the simple way. So I've just stacked a bunch of sawtooths and detuned them, and then I've got a filter on the main track, and then distortion is obviously what you want as well. It's going to give it actually kind of just, without it, it's almost a bit wilder without the distortion. Just having this driving it a little bit. It actually, for me, for my ears, it kind of compresses the sound and evens it out a little bit, and just actually makes it a little bit less wild, which you wouldn't think what distortion would usually do, but it just seems to help the sound a lot. So I've distortion, filter and I'm driving it out of the filter with a very low resonance. You can mess around with the resonance, but I'm just going quite low here. So for me, you get some really cool tones with this. You're kind of driving the signal quite a lot through the distortion and the filter drive, but then you're cutting a lot of the frequencies away, and you can get some cool movements. You could hear it there when I'm just moving my mouse with the cutoff. And you can modulate this with an LFO, or you can actually just, if you right click and hold, you can kind of put in some of this filter information as automation. So if I right click on this, you see it on my screen now. It's starting to enter this automation, and if I play through, so it's sounding pretty cool there, and it's not taking me long to get a really fat sounding Reece sound, and this is kind of the simple method to do it. So method number 1 here, I was playing with this and I was thinking, what happens if I want to like assign macros and kind of change the way this is working, so I can increase the detune amount and maybe increase the panning and some other sort of stuff. So what we're going to do now is go into kind of the advanced version of this patch, and this is the one which I will give to you in the comments, but it's one where you can save it away. It's all the distortion and filtering, it's actually part of the patch, so it's really, really helpful. If we just have a look at it now, it does get quite complicated, and I'm going to walk you through this step by step. But I've assigned all these macros and I've added all this kind of crazy stuff in here to make it very usable and just fun to mess around with. You can then go and modulate and automate all of these macros and get a really kind of dynamic sounding Reece. So before I dive into it, I'm quickly going to break down these macros. So I've got a detune here, and then it's basically like turning on, if any of you Serum, it's like turning that detune knob up. And then I've got width, which it's quite subtle, but it brings everything to the sides a bit more. I haven't done too crazy on the width. So that's pretty handy going there. And then the level this is the level of the main synth. So in this, I've actually got, what I've got is if I take this out as well, I have kind of 3 different stacks here. I have a main stack of like we did before, of the 6 sawtooths, all detuning, and then what I've got is I've actually got a sub bass in here, and I've got an octave layer. I have this octave, which is 12 semitones above just one layer, and then I have a sub layer as well, for any wearing headphones, which is quite fat, and that is just a sine wave. So I'll show you I will go through all of this in a second. And then we've got some distortion. So that's what's happening there. Let's just quickly go back here and reset them all. Okay, cool. Now let's just go right from the beginning, and we're going to go to our waveform, and we're going to start creating some sawtooths, and we need 6 sawtooths. So I'm just going to name these quickly so it's easy for you to see. Okay, we're going to do 6 sawtooths, and then we'll get onto the other stuff later. This time, rather than going and affecting them down here in this volume and panning area, I'm actually going to come into the modulation lanes. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this pitch range, and we're going to pull it down to 1. Now that just means the bottom of this is, you can see it's -1 semitone at the bottom and it's +1 semitone at the top. So I've just made the range a lot smaller. because when you're fine tuning here, it's only letting you go, 127 is I'm not sure why it's doing that actually. Maybe the fine tune is not in sense. I don't actually know what the fine tune is, but if it's in 127 steps, then maybe it's a little bit finer than sense. But the fine tune, here we go. Yeah, the fine tune pitch is steps of 1/28 of a semitone. So it's even finer than sense in Renoise. For whatever reason, they've done that. Okay, so we've got this at 1. Now we can go and we can just put an operand in pitch. And that's good for now. And then I'm going to select this. You see this focus window? I've selected this set 1. And I'm going to duplicate it out. And I'm going to go saw 1, 6. Okay. Now I've got saw 1 going to 1. I want saw 2 to 2, etc. all the way down. So now I'm assigning all these lanes for them all. So we've got all our saws now going to different lanes. So now we're going to create this detune macro. You click this little macros button and then we can go in here and assign the parameters for the macro. So I'm going to select value there. I'm going to come down, I'm going to select value. I'm going to come down and select the value of the operand, value of the operand, value of the operand, value of the operand. So before, when I did that example, I had slightly different values for the panning and for the fine tune. If you look, I did 15, 10 and 20 kind of on either sides. I've kind of split it, and so I want to emulate that in this patch as well. So to do that, I can actually come in this macro window and I can change these. So we want to have them slightly different, going either or, positive, negative, positive, negative. So let's just do it and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So for the first one, I'm going to go minus 0.15. Okay, I'm going to copy that here and then I'm going to go 0.15 plus for the other side. Okay, so these are the first 2 saws are going like this a little bit. That's the center, and I've just pitched them a little bit off, and then the next ones I'm going to go further, and then I'm going to go further, and so you've got this kind of spread of pitches, which is going to give me that nice detune. So for number 3, I'm going to go minus 0.25, and then I'm going to go 0.25. Okay, and copy these across, and then I'm going to go minus 0.4. I'm going to copy that across, and then I'm going to go 0.4. When it's in the middle here at 50, it's not detuning at all, but as I spread it, so you get all this nice detuning of the saws, okay? So that's the first start. You do get all that phasing as well, but that's kind of part of it. So we can leave that. You can, I've done a couple of little experiments to see which kind of amounts work the best, but there's obviously a lot of room to improve on that, and by changing the kind of ratios in between these different pairs of saws, you'd get very different results. So I'll leave that up to you. We're going to go now and we're actually going to do the panning. So the panning is the same idea. We just go to panning for each of these lanes, and I'm going to put an operand in each of them, and I'm going to copy. Let's just go and copy. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to go and map this again. So panning. And this is the same idea as we had before. And let's just call this width. Okay, so this is the same idea we had before. And I'm now just going to give them slightly different values. So the 1 and 2 are a bit closer panning. So the same way I spread all out the pitches, I'm going to spread out the panning in the same way. Oh yeah, look, I haven't done this right here, have I? I've gone -1, and then I need to go positive and negative. So you get that fat sound. If you can hear it a lot better here, 50s is in the middle. And then it starts to spread out. And then both ways kind of spread. So 50 is your kind of center point, straight down in kind of mono or more mono. So I think this, by detuning the pitches, I think that's already creating some stereo width. So that's mainly what we need just to set up these saws. And so we're now going to come in this effects window. I've got 3 channels. I've got one called the main, one called the octave, and one called the sub. And I'm actually just going to put a gain on each of these. Okay, and this gain, I'm going to map it to level. Okay, so we've got saw level, and now I'm going to add a filter so we can get this filter cutoff going, and I'm just going to assign this to cutoff. So now we've got a nice, which is really essential for this fat Reece sound, is to have that filtering, and I'm just going to leave it at this kind of slightly more gentle slope. Can leave that, maybe add a little bit of drive, but you can play with that. And then we're going to carry on, and I'm going to go and add a distortion as well. And so I've just mapped this to drive here, and I'm going to choose the shape kind of algorithm for distortion because I think it's closer to saturation and less wild, like some of the razor and the shift are a bit mental. Actually, for some reason I'm quite liking distortion after the filter there, but you can do what you want with that. Let's do one more thing while we're here, and let's do this release. So in volume, I'm going to set up an envelope, and I'm going to pull decay in because I'm going full sustain. The decay doesn't matter, and then I'm going to actually map this last one to release, and I'm going to call this release. Okay, and then I'm going to make the max maybe 1 second. I'm not going to need much more than that. Okay, so we're going to copy this and go through all of them again. And then I'm also going to have to go then and map this release to all of them. And let's go and just change these all around. Okay, so cool. Release is good. And now I think we can probably turn on mono as well on this one. Maybe get it a little bit of glide somewhere like here. That's kind of cool around there somewhere. Okay, so now we've got to do the last two. So I'm going to take this sawtooth. Now what I'm actually going to do is just create a new sample, and I'm going to go into the waveform, and I'm going to get a new sawtooth. And then I'm going to create a new patch, and I'll call this Octave. And I'm going to assign this new sawtooth to that. I'm going to call it Octave. I'm going to keep this octave right in the middle. And I do want to have this release, so I'm going to have to copy this into the octave. And we're going to have to go and copy that again. I want to do something different with the pitch. So in the pitch, I'm just going to put an operand in. And I'm going to leave this pitch range at 12, and I'm just going to put it to the top. So that is going to pitch it an octave up, and then I'm going to go into this octave, and I'm going to assign the octave to the octave kind of channel in here, and we're going to map the gainer of that channel and call it octave. Cool, so we've now got this octave layer, but as you can hear, it's not getting filtered. So we're going to actually have to copy the filter down, come into the filter cutoff, and then also assign the same filter cutoff to the octave layer in the same way. And then I'm actually going to do the same for distortion. I'm going to bring the distortion down, and then I'm actually going to go and assign distortion in the same way. Or maybe we don't want distortion. Maybe we'll have the octave layer. That's for you to play with. I've assigned it there, so now I can just kind of toggle it on and off by alt clicking and muting it in this area. And then the last one is I'm going to create one more new sample, and I'm going to go waveform, and I'm going to go and just get a sine. Now I'm going to have to come back to this modulations window, and I'm going to have to add this to a sub layer, and I'm again going to have to copy this volume envelope just so it's going to follow the same as the rest of them. Add this to release, same as all the other ones, and then assign this sub layer to volume. And then, as you can probably guess, I'm going to come and assign the sub layer to its own channel here, and then I'm going to go and map this gainer and call it sub. Now on my version I've added an R bass, and I'm actually going to copy this and take this over, and I'm going to paste it in, because for me it just makes such a difference. If I play the same note, it just gives me loads of definition. Even though I have really nice speakers I'm working on, I still struggle to hear. I haven't got a sub, so I struggle to hear sub bass. And using R bass, which is a Waves plugin, it basically, I think it just adds harmonics. It's kind of like a saturator, and I'm telling it, I think anything above 50 hertz, which is very low, that's kind of like sub area. I could even go lower, but it gets a bit wild. I'm just adding some harmonics there, and I've got it quite a low intensity, so I'm just blending in a little bit of extra harmonics just so I can hear the sub. But I think it definitely helps. So now we've got this sub layer in, and we're pretty much there now. I don't think I've done anything else. Sounding massive, and then you can just save this away. Cool. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to leave you with this track here I've done, just a little demo track with some cool samples I took from some old kind of grimy Gangs in London videos.
This gang beef is all bullshit. Man, out here fighting for what? A postcode you don't even fucking own.
You ain't with the gang, you're a victim, you know that, innit?
Called Blue Story.
Hey, you man, go round at all the things, yeah?
Just loads of cool stuff. I mean, the just sampling off YouTube and movies and stuff, you've got an endless resource. So I'm always doing stuff like that and trying to find cool stuff to put in my tracks. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in my next one. Peace.
This gang beef is all bullshit. Man, out here fighting for what? A postcode you don't even fucking own.
You ain't with the gang, you're a victim.
I ain't never seen one of you little dickheads on the block with my once, you know, bruv. That pussy old, bruv.